The night the sky fell. It started with a light, too bright, too fast, too deliberate. At first, it was nothing more than a shimmering streak in the Florida night sky, a shooting star with a strange sense of direction. But within seconds, it became clear. This wasn't some cosmic coincidence. The object moved with intelligence, weaving through the clouds like a predator stalking its prey. And then, impact. A thunderous roar split the silence, rattling windows for miles. At the heart of the chaos, behind the iron gates of a sprawling $50 million estate, something had fallen. Jack Monroe, real estate mogul, ex-military contractor, and a man who had seen too much in his lifetime, was the first to reach the impact site. He wasn't the kind to scare easily, but what he saw that night turned his blood to ice. His perfectly manicured golf course was now a smoking crater, the ground scorched and twisted as if reality itself had buckled. In the center of it all, half buried in the dirt, was something that didn't belong to this world. The air was thick with the scent of burnt ozone, an eerie static charge making the hairs on Jack's arms stand on end. The object, sleek, metallic and pulsing with an unnatural glow, hummed like a living thing. He had spent years investing in cutting-edge aerospace projects, but this was beyond human engineering. His first instinct was to call someone, NASA, the Air Force, maybe even the Pentagon. But then a chilling thought crept into his mind. What if this was never meant to be found? As he took a cautious step forward, something shifted. A panel on the side of the craft hissed, then cracked open, releasing a thick, silver mist. Jack's survival instincts screamed at him to run, but curiosity held him in place. From within the craft, shadows moved. Something or someone was inside. He could hear the faint sound of mechanical clicks, almost like breathing. A security alarm blared from the main house. Motion sensors tripped. The cameras caught movement, but not from him. Jack spun around just in time to see figures emerging. From the mist, tall and slender, their silhouettes bending the very light around them. His breath caught in his throat. These weren't just survivors of the crash. They had been waiting for someone to open that door. From the hills beyond his property, black SUVs with no license plates were already speeding toward him, their engines roaring like hellhounds unleashed. The government, whoever they were, had been watching, waiting for this exact moment. Jack realized too late that he was now part of something far bigger than himself. As the figures stepped fully into the moonlight, Jack's mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. Their movements were deliberate, intelligent, almost human, yet unmistakably alien. One of them, its dark, reflective eyes locked onto his, raised a hand, not in a gesture of peace, but of command. Then the first shot rang out. The night erupted into chaos. Helicopters cut through the sky. Men in black tactical gear flooded the grounds. And in that instant, Jack understood the terrible truth. This wasn't a discovery. This was a cover-up. Because the real question wasn't where this thing came from. The real question was, why now? The first bullet sliced through the night air, shattering the eerie silence like glass. Jack barely had time to react before a second shot followed, this one ricocheting off the metallic hull of the craft with a sharp, unnatural ping. The figures, aliens, beings, whatever they were, did not flinch. They moved in unison, faster than anything Jack had ever seen, their elongated limbs bending in ways that defied logic. But it wasn't just speed, it was something more. The very air around them seemed to distort, as if reality itself was struggling to hold onto their presence. And then, without warning, they vanished. Not ran, not jumped. They simply blinked out of existence. The men in black tactical gear stormed. Forward, their rifles aimed, their eyes hidden behind opaque visors. "On the ground, now!" one of them barked. Jack barely heard him. His mind was still trying to process what had just happened. The mist from the craft swirled around his legs, thick like liquid metal, clinging to his skin with an almost sentient grip. He took a step back, but his body felt heavy, as if the gravity around him had subtly shifted. He knew better than to resist, but something deep in his gut told him that compliance wouldn't save him, not this time. One of the agents pressed a gloved hand to his earpiece. "Subject is contained. The assets are mobile. We have a breach." His voice was clipped, efficient. This was routine for them. Jack's heart pounded. Routine! How many times had this happened before? And then, as if in response to his thoughts, the craft, silent until now, began to pulse. A low, rhythmic hum vibrated through the ground, deep enough to rattle Jack's ribs. The mist thickened, swirling into patterns, forming symbols that shifted and flickered like data on a corrupted screen. The agents noticed it too. Their leader turned sharply, signaling his men to fall back. But it was too late. The hum intensified, rising to a deafening pitch, and then, boom! A shockwave blasted outward, throwing Jack to the ground. He felt the heat ripple over his skin, but there were no flames, no fire, just pure energy. The SUVs parked along the driveway flickered, their engines dying. The security lights around the mansion burst, plunging everything into darkness. And then the stars above moved. Jack stared, his breath shallow. No, not the stars. There were shapes up there, massive and silent, blending so seamlessly into the night sky that they had gone unnoticed. Until now. The realization hit him like a gut punch. The craft that had crashed. It wasn't alone. It was never alone. Somewhere in the distance, a radio crackled. One of the agents, struggling to his feet, shouted into his comms, his voice laced with panic. "They're responding! I repeat, they are responding!" From the wreckage, the mist coalesced, shifting, moving, forming into something new. Jack could swear he saw figures rebuilding themselves from it, assembling like they were data downloading into physical form. His pulse thundered in his ears. This wasn't a crash. This wasn't an accident. It was a signal. And whoever, whatever, was up there, they had just received it. Jack's mind was drowning in chaos. The air was thick with static, his ears ringing from the explosion, his muscles locked in place by something beyond fear, something primal, something that whispered you are standing at the edge of the unknown. And it is staring back at you. The agents were scrambling, their perfect formation shattered by forces they didn't understand. The black SUVs flickered, their headlights stuttering as if reality itself was struggling to maintain coherence. And above, the sky was changing, a deep, guttural sound, something too vast and ancient to be man-made, reverberated through the atmosphere. It wasn't a sound that came through the ears. It was something that pressed against the bones, rattled the mind, demanded to be acknowledged. Jack looked up, his breath stolen from his lungs. The stars weren't just moving, they were descending. Silhouettes, enormous and deliberate, shifted against the void. No thrusters, no engines, no sign of propulsion, just sheer, impossible presence. The agents knew. Jack could see it in their sudden hesitation. These weren't men on a mission anymore. These were pawns who had just realized the game was much, much bigger than they had been told. One of them grabbed Jack's collar, his visor reflecting the chaos unfolding. "You need to move now," he shouted, but the urgency in his voice wasn't just about safety, it was about secrecy. Jack was never meant to see this. None of them were. And then the mist moved again. It rose like a tide, curling around the agents, slithering into their weapons, their vehicles. Jack watched as their fingers locked up, their limbs stiffening. Their bodies were freezing mid-motion, like puppets caught in invisible strings. He tried to take a step back, but his legs felt heavy, unresponsive. It wasn't paralysis, it was control. And in that moment, Jack understood something terrifying. This wasn't just advanced technology, this was ownership. Whatever was inside that craft, whatever intelligence had shaped it, had not just crashed. It had been retrieved by something higher, by something that had just decided who did and did not belong. The agents who had come to contain the situation, they had been contained instead. And Jack, he was still free. Why? The mist pulled away from him like an ocean retreating from the shore, curling back into the ruins of the craft. The symbols pulsed faster now, communicating, transmitting. Jack wasn't sure how he knew, but he could feel it. This was a message being sent. The question was, to whom? Then the final blow came. From the heavens, a blinding shaft of light pierced the sky. It wasn't just illumination, it was something else, something that burned without heat, something that searched. The mist reacted instantly, collapsing back into the ship, the frozen agent suddenly convulsing as if rebooting. Jack shielded, his eyes, his heart hammering. The craft, now whole again, began to rise. It wasn't being lifted, it was being retrieved. Jack wanted to scream, to demand answers, to fight against the pull of forces he would never understand. But the truth had already settled in his chest like cold steel. This wasn't humanity's secret to uncover. It never had been. And then, silence. The craft was gone. The mist was gone. The frozen agents collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The black SUVs flickered back to life. The night reset itself as if nothing had ever happened, as if the universe had erased the evidence before morning could come. Jack stood there, his mansion in ruins, his mind forever changed. No one would believe him. The world would continue, oblivious, as it always had. But he knew. He had seen the threshold between worlds, and the worst part, they had seen him too. And if they ever came back, would it be to observe or to collect? If this story sent chills down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button. What do you think really happened that night? Drop a comment below, subscribe for more mind-bending mysteries, and don't miss our previous videos, because the truth is always closer than you think. Share this with someone who needs to see it, because some secrets, they refuse to stay buried.